Welcome to Tekedia Daily. I'm Ndubuisi Ekekwe. Our conversation today will focus on why Nigeria tech firms are increasingly opening business operations in Nairobi, Kenya. This week we heard that Rationale, a pioneer digital travel agent in Nigeria, is opening operations in the East African country. We also heard that Mall for Africa, the shopping app which has actually raised millions of dollars to connect African shoppers to deep retail outlets in Western Europe, United States, and Europe. They are opening these operations and they are joining some of other Nigerian companies like Jumia and Dela White Fusion being a digital advertising company which are already operating in Kenya. The question is this: why are these companies seeing? Why Kenya? Kenya has a GDP of roughly $63 billion, and that is significantly lower than the GDP of Lagos at the best of time, anyway, for Lagos. Population of 48 million is also roughly more than twice, nearly about twice the population of Lagos. GNI per capita is 3,000 purchasing power parity. Relatively in Africa, I would say this is really cool. These numbers are very nice. Because if you take Lagos, and there are very few other cities where you can actually get numbers like this. And if you're looking specifically in Nairobi without necessarily averaging the whole of Kenya, the numbers significantly improved. So Kenya has a relative good middle class, especially Nairobi has a relative good middle class. So this purchasing power parity at the GNI per capita will actually go up. Kenya is a pioneering company in terms of, and a pioneering country in terms of smart regulation, especially in the digital ecosystem, telecommunications, smart money, mobile money, and all kinds of anything digital. They are leading the continent, if not the world, in some of the most critical sectors when you come into the digital ecosystem. So that smart regulation is actually the reason why companies like to go there, because they know that if there is something that the regulation can help them fix, they have leadership that can actually make it possible. So you have Huawei, you have IBM, you have Nokia, all of them, most of them operating in Nairobi through the Strathmore University campus. And this gives so many companies the validation, this kind of confidence that this is actually a country where you can do great business. Kenya is a fast-growing economy, and it's also a market-oriented economy. It's not mineral. So the cyclical boom and bust that we experience in commodity-based economics, you are not necessarily going to see that in Kenya. Of course, Kenya is still part of the world global ecosystem. If things go bad in any other part of the world, it will affect Kenya. But the reality is this: Kenya has built an element of resilience that does not have to be coupled to a crude oil, just like we have in Nigeria. So if you get in here, you are certainly going to be sure that not many things can necessarily go bad because of what is happening in Vienna, in OPEC. So the road to East Africa is certainly through Kenya, because countries like Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and all these other countries, the best way to reach them is actually operating from Kenya. When you operate from Nairobi, you can have access to those countries. Kenya is certainly a leader when you benchmark Kenya with other East African countries. It has the right talent pool. University of Nairobi, Strathmore University, and the clusters of some of the finest technology hubs like iHub, NILAB are very, very critical in providing a deep knowledge base that can actually help technology companies to flourish. Sandbox of innovation is what I call Kenya, because they allowed the digital companies to try all kinds of things. And that is the reason why we have M-Pesa. That is the reason why we have Mkopa. That is the reason we have all these companies like Craft Silicon. They are just pioneering new things within the mobile and telecommunication space. So the language they speak in Kenya is the language you speak in Lagos. The culture in Lagos is the same culture in Kenya. So opening a business operation in Kenya may not necessarily feel extremely difficult. Of course, we still have to deal with the distance. And most times you have to fly into Europe before you get into Kenya. But right now, there is Kenya Airways that can fly directly from Lagos to Nairobi. So we have the same culture, we have the same language. That means that that problem you can experience when you are moving from one country to the other may be a little bit manageable within this particular country. So Kenya also has a relative stability, except pockets of presidential crisis over the last few years, and Kenya has remained a largely peaceful country. So, but the key thing these companies are looking, besides all these other things I've mentioned, they are really looking at the very positive digital trends in terms of increasingly positive penetration of internet, broadband access, mobile adoption in Kenya. If you are a digital-based company, you want to go to a place where people are increasingly moving into the future. Kenya is leading Africa in that space. They have the best possible broadband access. They have the best possible mobile access in sub-Saharan Africa. In some cases, excluding South Africa, because South Africa is itself it's an entirely different game. But we also have to understand that, South Africa may be a little bit more difficult for anyone to penetrate because it has already gotten extremely high funded tech companies. So it's not something a Lagos company can easily break into because they have stabilized, they have a fairly decent relative mature economy. So, but Kenya is still open for grab. I think that is the reason why when you look at the numbers, even though the South African numbers may be better, people still say, hey, Kenya is a place to do it because this is a place you can test the sub-Saharan African market within a very smart regulatory environment. Because if you can get it right in Kenya, there's a possibility that you can push into other parts of the continent. So the rationale is great that you can see Kenya, especially Nairobi, as the second most economically viable state in Nigeria after Lagos. So I'm saying that essentially that Nairobi is a state in Nigeria. So you look at your numbers, you just see, hey, after Lagos, which other state do I have to conquer? It turns out that Nairobi is actually the best possible one. Port Harcourt, Abuja, Kanu, hey, we like them. Unfortunately, there are just so many things that are not working right there. So in those states and in those locations, in those cities in Nigeria, you are not getting the kind of technology innovation readiness that you can experience in Lagos or in Nairobi. So at the end of the day, it's really either you are in Lagos or you are in Nairobi. So Ghana is really significantly small. It's very, very marginally small. 38 billion GDP and about 29 million people population. And if you look at Accra, Kumasi, that's a very small number. But when you go to Nairobi, Kenya, everything looks good. So you say, hey, after Lagos, the next state I have to be in business is to move to Nairobi. And you remember that Nairobi, especially in Kenya, they are digitally aware. They are extremely digitally aware. They are the forefront of this digital transformation in Africa. They embraced the mobile money before anyone even thought it was a possibility in the world. So if you have such, it makes it easy for you to sell your digital wares. So that's very critical for digital companies because when you have people that have adopted the whole construct of how you do business. So you can now focus on actually figuring out how to build better products and services that can compete in the marketplace instead of going through the whole process of trying to educate people about why they actually have to become digitally aware. So trust is also higher because they are digital citizens. They understand everything that has to do with digital. So just build the right products and they will come. And most importantly, I would say Kenyans actually like Nigerian products. I was in Kenya uh, a few days ago, and I saw how popular Nollywood was. This is really awesome, because what happens here is this: when I got into Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, I said, "Hey, how is Nigeria?" Even though I was holding a U.S. passport, and they were, "Hey, how is Nigeria?" He said, "How?" He said, "Hey, I got your accent because we watch these Nigerian movies." So they really, really like and enjoy Nigerian Nollywood. So, and Kenya, as I've said before, is closer in many ways as we have in Nigeria and Ghana. So it is very natural for these companies to operate therein. So as we continue to see these companies looking for growth, it really makes sense for Nigeria technology companies to look at places not necessarily within the country, unfortunately, where they can find that growth. Because we may say we are 190 million people or 200 million people, but at the end of the day, the serviceable market may actually be 20 million people. And if you have 20 million people serviceable, and you go to the city of Nairobi and you can get maybe 10 million people or 8 million people, whatever you can get there that are ready, turns out it's not necessarily a bad one. So it's more of what is the density of the population of the people? What is the population density of the specific in city, the specific market that you are looking at? And if you look at it, Nairobi is one of the best possible in the continent. So that is the reason why I continue to see it, that the road to East Africa is going to go through Nairobi, Kenya. And that is why many Nigerian companies will continue to move and open operations in Kenya. And it's going to be, I just hope that we continue to build companies across Africa, because we need as many as we can. Thank you very much for listening. This is Tekedia Daily. Ndubuisi Ekekwe.